You're a Rockstar developer in 2009. You're standing in the middle of Cairo. Sirens begin to blare, and the next thing you know, you're in handcuffs. The cops think you're shooting an adult film, but really, you're just taking reference photos for a spy game that never released. That's the kind of chaos buried in Rockstar's history, because while most studios chase yearly sequels, Rockstar would rather spend a decade crafting one generation-defining masterpiece. And that comes at a cost. 7 games were killed before you even heard about them. And the stories behind those cancellations, they might change the way you see Rockstar forever. This is the story of the games Rockstar buried. Let's start with one of the biggest heartbreaks in Rockstar's history. Back in 2009, Sony walked onto the E3 stage with an insane announcement.
Today, we'd like to announce a new property coming from Rockstar North. It's called Agent, and it will be exclusive to PlayStation 3.
They'd secured a PlayStation 3 exclusive from Rockstar Games called Agent, a Cold War spy thriller that was supposed to be genre-defining. Apparently, Sony had dropped $75 million to keep this game away from Xbox, calling it their answer to Microsoft's limited-time Grand Theft Auto 4 exclusivity. Agent was supposed to take players on a globe-trotting adventure through the late 1970s. Think James Bond meets Rockstar's signature sauce. The game would have featured stealth mechanics, counterintelligence operations, and assassination missions targeting high-profile political figures. Cairo was going to be one of the main locations, which brings us back to that arrest story. When a team of artists from Rockstar San Diego booked flights to Egypt to map out Cairo for the game, they needed reference photos for the city's architecture and street layouts. But when local authorities spotted them photographing government buildings, things got dicey, fast. The devs were detained, accused of filming corn. It took the US government getting involved to get them released and back to the United States safely. That Cairo incident perfectly captures what went wrong with Agent. The project was bouncing between studios, starting at Rockstar San Diego in the mid-2000s. After reports of horrible working conditions, development shifted to Rockstar North around 2009. By then, the PlayStation 3 was already showing its age, and Rockstar's priorities were changing. The game that was supposed to revolutionize espionage gaming became a victim of Rockstar's own success. Resources that could have finished Agent were redirected to Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. By 2018, Rockstar quietly let their trademark on Agent expire, and the project was officially dead. But Agent wasn't the only game that failed to redefine a genre. Around that same time, Rockstar was also working on reviving the Spec Ops franchise. Now, this wasn't the masterpiece Spec Ops: The Line that came out in 2012. This was before that. It was Rockstar's take on military shooters, and it could have been something very special. Josh Holmes, the frontman of Queens of the Stone Age, was brought in to work on the soundtrack. Holmes called working on the project a dream come true, which makes its cancellation even more painful. This was years before Call of Duty turned military shooters into Michael Bay fever dreams. Rockstar's Spec Ops could have delivered the kind of biting social commentary that made Grand Theft Auto famous. Think about what Rockstar could have done with a military theme. Their games have always been amazing at satirizing American culture, from commentary on consumerism to politics and celebrity culture. A Rockstar military shooter could have torn apart the military-industrial complex and world superpowers in the same way. The timing was perfect too. This was the height of the Iraq War, when Americans were beginning to question the endless cycle of wars around the world. Rockstar's satirical lens would have captured that cultural moment in ways that other developers wouldn't dare try. Instead, we got years of stale Call of Duty sequels where you shoot waves of mindless enemies and Nicki Minaj skins. Both Agent and Spec Ops died for the same reason: Rockstar's pursuit of perfection. When Grand Theft Auto 5 started showing massive potential, every available developer was pulled into making it the best possible experience, and the same thing happened with Red Dead Redemption 2. To Rockstar, these games were massive, generation-defining moments that needed to be absolutely flawless. Some former developers have hinted that concepts from both games found their way into late Rockstar projects. The stealth mechanics from Agent might have influenced some missions in Grand Theft Auto 5. The social commentary planned for Spec Ops could have shaped Red Dead Redemption 2's critique of America, but we'll never truly know what these games could have been. While Agent and Spec Ops were ambitious new ideas, some of Rockstar's most painful cancellations were sequels to beloved franchises that fans are still begging for today. The most heartbreaking of these has to be Bully 2. The original Bully was this weird, wonderful experiment that proved Rockstar could tell compelling stories without guns and car chases. Jimmy Hopkins navigating the social ladder of Bulworth Academy felt like a natural evolution of Rockstar's storytelling abilities. And to the surprise of the devs, that underdog story really drew people in.
You seem to be making yourself quite comfortable here, my boy.
I'm just trying to fit in. Get off me, man!
So when rumors started swirling about a sequel in the late 2000s, fans went crazy. Rockstar had actually written a complete script for Bully 2. The story would have picked up with Jimmy at his stepfather's house at the end of the school year, presumably setting up a new adventure in a different setting. But timing is everything in game development, and Bully 2's timing could not have been worse. The late 2000s and early 2010s saw a string of school shootings that made school violence a pretty touchy subject. Suddenly, a game about fighting bullies and navigating teenage social circles felt a little riskier. Rockstar, despite their reputation for controversy, started to get cold feet. They felt that releasing a school-based game during that period would have been a PR nightmare, and they were probably right. But the story doesn't end there. Around 2013, Rockstar made a second attempt at Bully 2. This time, they committed serious resources to the project. Developers worked for 18 months, creating what insiders described as a playable vertical slice of the game. This wasn't just concept art and design documents, they had actual gameplay running. Yet, even this second attempt became consumed by internal debates about the game's direction and concerns about the public's response. School shootings were still a sensitive topic, and Rockstar finally decided that they weren't in a position to make a game set in a school, no matter how they approached it. Bully 2's cancellation represents something larger about Rockstar's evolution as a company. They went from scrappy underdogs willing to tackle any controversial subject to a massive corporation with shareholders to answer to. Taking huge dollar and PR risks on smaller franchises became impossible to justify when GTA and Red Dead were literally printing money. Speaking of smaller franchises, The Warriors 2 might be the most forgotten and overlooked cancellation in Rockstar's history. The original Warriors was this perfect blend of 1970s New York atmosphere and brutal beat-em-up gameplay. It captured the gritty, dangerous feel of the movie while expanding the story in meaningful ways. Rockstar's plan for a sequel was brilliant. Instead of staying in New York, they wanted to explore 1960s Britain during the clash between mods and rockers. The game was going to be called We Are the Mods, focusing on the war between two very opposite British youth cultures. The mod versus rocker conflict was a real cultural moment in British history that created the kind of social tension that Rockstar excels at exploring. Picture the Warriors gang transplanted to seaside towns like Brighton, where these youth actually clashed in real life. The potential for authentic atmosphere and social commentary was off the charts. But The Warriors 2 got axed when Rockstar decided to focus on Manhunt 2 instead. Looking back, that decision seems like a horrible one. Manhunt 2 was a controversial mess that got banned in multiple countries and for many wasn't even as good as the first game. Meanwhile, The Warriors 2 could have been this unique game that no other developer could have pulled off. These cancellations reveal the harsh reality of modern game dev. Fan demand doesn't always reflect corporate priorities. Bully and The Warriors both have passionate followings, but passionate followings don't pay for $100 million development budgets. When you're Rockstar Games, every project has to fight against the critical acclaim and massive profits of Grand Theft Auto. It makes sense, but it's still frustrating for fans who fell in love with these smaller, more interesting franchises. Rockstar's willingness to take creative risks on games like Bully and The Warriors is part of what made them special in the first place. But if you thought those canceled sequels were painful, wait until you hear about these weird experiments that almost got made. This was Rockstar in their creative bag, before they settled into their current formula. The most tantalizing what-if has to be GTA Tokyo. After GTA 3 became a massive success, Sam Houser found himself traveling to Japan frequently for promo tours. Something about the city captured his imagination. The streets soaked in neon lights, the dense urban environment, the unique culture, it all seemed perfect for Rockstar's formula. According to former developers, Houser was genuinely excited about the possibility of setting a Grand Theft Auto game in Tokyo. These weren't just wild daydreams. The team started doing pre-production research, trying to figure out how they could adapt their formula to a completely different setting. But the more they dug into it, the more problems began to surface. Getting a research team to Japan for extended periods was expensive and logistically complicated. Remember, this was the early 2000s, when international game development was much more difficult than it is today. The team would need months in Tokyo to properly map out the city and understand its nuances. Even bigger than the logistical challenges were the creative ones. Rockstar's games work because they're a critique of a culture they understand. The developers get the social, political, and cultural quirks that make places like Liberty City and Vice City feel authentic. But satirizing Japanese culture, that's a completely different beast. How do you write any social commentary about a society you didn't grow up in? How do you avoid the kind of cultural stereotyping that would have made the game feel cheap or even offensive? These weren't just creative challenges, they were ethical ones. Rockstar ultimately decided it was just cooler to stick with the cities that were introduced in Grand Theft Auto 1. Looking back, that decision probably saved them from a potential disaster, but it also robbed us of what could have been the most unique entry in the series. Imagine Rockstar's take on Tokyo's business culture, how society juggles the traditional with the modern. The Yakuza series has shown it can be done, but Rockstar's formula could have created something insane. Now here's where things get really weird. In the late 1990s, when Rockstar San Diego was called Angel Studios, they began working on a kart racer called Buggy Boogie in collaboration with, get this, Shigeru Miyamoto. This wasn't your typical Mario Kart clone. The concept involved sentient vehicles that would literally eat their opponents after each race, stealing their DNA and absorbing their powers. The more races you won, the more your kart would evolve, becoming more and more bizarre and powerful throughout the tournament. Now think about how different gaming history could have been if this project had succeeded. Maybe they would have built a reputation for weird experimental games instead of mature-rated open-world crime games. But Nintendo and Miyamoto eventually lost interest in the project. Some of its concepts seemed to influence other games like Diddy Kong Racing, but Buggy Boogie itself disappeared into Rockstar's vault, and probably for the best. Alright, now, not all of these cancellations are that ancient, like GTA 5 single-player DLC. After GTA 4's successful expansions, fans expected similar DLC for GTA 5. Rockstar even teased that single-player content was coming. The planned DLC sounded absolutely wild, too. One storyline would have featured Franklin fighting off zombie hordes in an apocalyptic Los Santos, similar to Red Dead Redemption's Undead Nightmare expansion. Another involved an alien invasion, building on those weird UFO encounters that players occasionally stumbled across in the main game. The third storyline was perhaps the most intriguing, Trevor joining the IAA and possibly committing war crimes on behalf of the federal government. Now these weren't just random ideas thrown around in brainstorms. According to former developers, the DLC was huge and would have featured all three main characters in new storylines. But then, something came along and changed the Rockstar's focus. That something? Grand Theft Auto Online. At its peak, GTA Online made about $500 million annually. When you're printing money with shark cards that players buy over and over, why spend resources on single-player content that you can only sell once? GTA Online's success essentially killed Rockstar's willingness to make smaller projects. They went from a company that loved to creatively experiment to one that follows the money. But can you blame them? All of these cancellations reveal something fundamental about how Rockstar operates as a creative company. While other studios chase trends and pump out annual sequels, Rockstar has always believed in a different philosophy. One masterpiece beats 10 good games. This approach has given us some of the most influential games in history. When Rockstar commits to a project, their goal is to not just shift the culture of video games, but entertainment as a whole. That approach comes with a bunch of downsides. Talented developers spend years working on passion projects that never see the light of day. Artists create concept art for games that get shelved. Writers craft storylines that disappear into filing cabinets. The Cairo incident with Agent just shows how far these developers were willing to go for projects that ultimately meant nothing. Former Rockstar employees have described the emotional toll of these cancellations. You can spend months or even years believing in a project, only to watch it get killed for business or sometimes PR reasons that have nothing to do with the quality of your work. These canceled projects also represent a worse-off games industry. Each one was a chance for Rockstar to push video games in a new direction, to prove that games could tackle any subject matter with intelligence and creativity. Instead, we're left with nostalgia for games that never were, wondering what might have been if Rockstar had stuck to their experimental roots. Anyway, thanks for watching, and let me know if you could revive one of these canceled games, which one would you pick? Also, make sure to subscribe and drop a like to never miss any more of these video game documentaries. Making these takes a ton of time, but your support makes it all worth it.